The passage. Hey, Mom. Found some tapes engraved in Dad's things. You can hear him telling stories to one of us, but I don't know who it is. Because that voice isn't mine, is it? The one of the child that is heard in the background, to whom Dad is telling the story. So, where did you get those tapes, Jose? My mother asked me, frowned. Surely it's one of your siblings. I didn't remember Dad telling us stories. I remembered him as a cold and distant man, who would go to work and come back always too tired to devote time for us. Stayed with my brothers and put the tapes on for them to listen. Nor did they recognize the child's voice, nor that our father told us or read us stories. Many years had passed and it was very difficult to remember what our children's voices sounded like. After so many years of being dead, we doubted until that was Dad's voice. Hey, Mom. I spoke to Luis and Carlos and they also have no idea what you hear on the tapes. We don't remember Dad telling us stories. Do you remember if he used to read us stories? Oh. I don't know what to tell you then. Your father was a very basic man. Apart from working, I didn't know much. Hey. Well, if the voices you hear don't look like ours or Dad's, it's just like this tape isn't ours. The thing is, that's how it turned out. The time has passed. Completed my college education. I got a job and married Nancy, my forever girlfriend. A few years later, Eric was born. We were preparing a random Sunday meal when Nancy caught her eye on me, pointing at me to listen, babies. You could hear Eric's babbling, but one more voice seemed to be heard, very faint, almost invisible. It wasn't very good at understanding, but it was like telling Eric a story. We rushed up to Eric's room and there was no one there, or no one else was heard except our little boy. Then I remembered the tapes of the past and how much the adult voices sounded alike. Hey, Mom. Do you remember about 5 years ago that I brought you some tapes where you could hear an adult telling stories to a little boy? Sit next to me, my son. I will tell you the truth. Even though it's painful and inexplicable, in our family there is a curse that is passed down from generation to generation. No one knows where it came from or when it happened. I'll tell you as far as I know. Your grandfather, your father's father, had a son with his wife. They began to hear voices around the house, like the ones you'll be hearing now. One day, the grandfather came home and found his wife next to his son's body. She had killed him, saying she had killed the Antichrist. Child had the mark of the devil. They hid the child's body in this very basement and the grandfather sealed a pact with the devil, through which the rest of his descendants grew up and lived safe. No one knows who the voice is, but those stories he tells the boys and the family as kids are protective, unless they have the mark of the devil. Eric doesn't have any marks. But what nonsense are you telling me about? Son of mine. Now go to your house with your son and wife. You'll know what to do. I went home with some restlessness. Nancy was sitting on the rocking chair with Eric on her lap. Her tears said it all. Eric was dead and my wife's tears were falling down on our son's wet body, who had been drowned by Nancy in a can of water. She carried in her hand the remains of the umbilical cord, which she kept in a small box as a reminder of the birth of our firstborn. I could see the mark of the devil there. Drove our son to my parents' house. My mom saw me coming carrying the little one. I went down to the basement and looked everywhere, every corner, until I found a door behind an old closet. I walked through that door and discovered a passage with wooden buckets on both sides, filled with bone and mummified remains of children, babies, all so small and defenseless, my ancestors. At the end of the hall, there was a stay. There I saw myself face to face with the devil himself. I sealed the covenant that would mark the destiny of the rest of my descendants. I deposited Eric in one of the buckets in the hallway and reclosed the door that gave entry to the hallway, going up from the basement, passing past my mother and returning to my home next to me. Woman. Now we have 2 sons. A 3-year-old and a 14-month-old baby. Every Sunday, as we prepare food in the kitchen, we hear that voice telling them stories. We know nothing bad can happen to them. We know that the curse only affects alternating generations and that the children of our children will be free from all curse.